Well, just like that, the Golden State Warriors dynasty in its current form is over. It was one hell of a run, one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. Dub Nation and any admirer of basketball can hold their heads high at that. You witnessed greatness for a very long time. And the big question now is what's next? We'll talk about that and much more. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, it's over. The Golden State Warriors lost tonight, game 6. They lost the series to an opponent that has had their number in both their franchises' histories when it comes to the postseason, referring to the Los Angeles Lakers. If you're on the older side of things like me, you remember a lot of playoff series dating back to the 80s. I don't know what the history between these two franchises are going back to the 70s and 60s. I do know, I believe in Rick Barry's rookie year or second year, I think it was his rookie year, the Warriors beat the Lakers in the postseason. And I think that was the last time they did it. The Los Angeles Lakers own this franchise when it comes to the postseason. Again, I have memories of it in the 80s where the Warriors would, anytime they advanced past the first round, you'd celebrate. Usually they'd come across the juggernaut Showtime Lakers of the 80s, and that was that. And I was not expecting a similar outcome here in 2023, but it's over. It's done. So, geez, where do we start? I guess I'll break down first what went wrong in this game. There was a lot. Stephen Curry was Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry is one of the greatest players in the history of this game. The fact that Stephen Curry turned 35 this year, he's still at the peak of his powers. But when you're in your mid 30s, the question of when that peak will dip has to come up. Again, he doesn't look like he's slowing down. Thank goodness. But in a year where the Warriors had every opportunity to win their 5th title in 9 years, and for Stephen Curry to win his 5th world championship, thus cementing his legacy as the greatest point guard ever, cementing his position on Mount Rushmore, the Warriors blew it. And when I say Warriors, I really am specifically referring to Steve Kerr, the head coach, who really exposed his limitations and his weaknesses as a head coach this year when he didn't have a brilliant assistant savant in Mike Brown carrying him and numerous Hall of Fame players at the peak of their powers carrying him. And when he was forced to apply ingenuity and play the right players and develop the right players and set up this roster so that come postseason they were ready for a deep run, he failed miserably. And I do think it's maybe time for this team to move on. I'll talk about that in just a second. But Stephen Curry, in his greatness, 32 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He did have 4 turnovers in this game, but when I read to you all the stat lines from the other players in this game tonight, those 4 turnovers will not mean a damn thing. One of the big disappointments in the night, clearly, was Klay Thompson. A lot of people, myself included, said Game 6 Klay and the myth behind it, the aura surrounding it, was desperately needed in this game. A performance similar to what we saw in 2016, a performance similar to what we saw just last year in Memphis and in Boston, that was sorely needed tonight. And we did not get anything close to that. Klay Thompson had a horrible game. There is no positive spin to put on just how bad Klay Thompson was. And it's going to raise a lot of questions about his future with this team, his role with this team, Maybe not next year, but we can completely quash all talk of any sort of max extension for Klay Thompson. He is no longer that player. I will love Klay Thompson forever for what he contributed to the Golden State Warriors dynasty. He will go down to the history books as one of the greatest shooters in NBA history, quite possibly the second greatest behind Steph and Curry. But he's clearly no longer the player that he once was. In a game where they desperately needed him, Klay Thompson, who was second on the team tonight in minutes behind Stephen Curry, 38 minutes to be precise, was 3 of 19 from the field, just 2 for 12 from beyond the arc. Didn't have any turnovers. Did have 5 assists. Did have 3 rebounds, but finished with 8 points. And Klay Thompson, even though his size is helpful, he's 6'7". Again, he's a smart player. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot, but he's also he never really was that great off the dribble. He's borderline worthless off the dribble now. He cannot make plays for himself, and he's no longer the consistent, reliable, deep threat he once was. Again, 2 for 12 from beyond the arc in a must-win Game 6. He was minus 33 in the plus minus. Yeah, that hurts. Klay Thompson seeing the end of his career or seeing his decline right in front of you, that sucks. That just hurts. What are you going to do? Klay's done. He will most likely still be the starter next year, most likely be the starting shooting guard next year. You heard me this season say numerous times, maybe bring him off the bench. Maybe adjust his role in this team to a Manu Ginobili type role so that he can be playing alongside some younger players, mentoring them, picking them up as they're making mistakes in their growth process. But Steve Kerr all season scoffed because numerous reporters asked him about that as well. Like, because Klay had his struggles this year. And even though he also had a great year early in the season, he was struggling. And every time the question was posed, or even just the idea was posed, what about Klay off the bench? He scoffed. A lot of fans scoffed. People just were repulsed at the idea. Guarantee no one's repulsed at that idea now. I think Klay would be a great sixth man, in all honesty. It's no disrespect to him, but Klay Thompson is no longer a superstar. Klay Thompson is no longer an all-star. And if this team next year, and I am looking forward to this offseason where we have to talk a lot about how this roster is going to be revamped, reconstructed. Some players might have to take on new adjusted roles, and Klay Thompson is going to have to be one of them. Klay Thompson is no longer him, unfortunately. I love him, and I do still think that there's a role for him on this team. He's still under contract for one more season before he becomes an unrestricted free agent. Klay Thompson is going to make $43 million next year in the final year of his max contract that he signed after 2019, soon after he tore his ACL in a heroic performance in the NBA Finals. But unfortunately, an injury that really prevented us from seeing that next level that I thought Klay could reach. He just continued ascending in his career before those injuries, first the ACL and then the ACL and then the Achilles a year later derailed that. But what Klay did last year was commendable. It was admirable. And again, if you're a member of Dub Nation, if you love this team, if you love basketball, even if you're not a Warriors fan, but you've been forced in some regard to watch the greatness that is the Golden State Warriors, Klay Thompson has contributed a lot to this game. I mean, personally, I love the guy. I love him, man. I've called him my spirit brother. We're both English Bulldog lovers. We're both ocean lovers. And this is the moment in professional sports that is the most brutal when your mortality is suddenly facing you right in front of you. And for Klay Thompson, that moment's here. And he had a really bad game. A lot of players had bad games, though. When we come back, I'm gonna highlight a few more stats just because I have to. We're gonna have all off season to talk about what's next for the Golden State Warriors. This is going to be the most interesting off season in the history of this franchise. I don't think that's hyperbolic. This franchise has only experienced one dynasty, and that's now. And they are at a crossroads. Some of the fundamental pieces are still going to be there next year. So to say that this whole thing is over, that they have no shot next year, I'm not going to buy into that. And you can even make the argument that the dynasty, if you want to use that word, referring to this team having championship mettle, this team being in contention to win world titles, they could easily still be in contention next year, but they're gonna have to make considerable changes. And we could talk about that uh, again all off season, all tonight. Um, but they did play a game tonight. I want to finish up discussing what went wrong in tonight's game because a lot went wrong in tonight's game. And it was all entirely on coaching. If you don't want to hear Steve Kerr criticism, you're free to go. Okay. No one's forcing you to watch this, but this is not going to be friendly territory for Steve Kerr. He deserves nearly all the blame for what happened this season. All the criticisms that I levied this season for all the decisions he was making. I don't know how many of you disagreed and how many of you scoffed and how many of you turned around and tried to ridicule me for saying it was a colossal mistake to not be playing Moody and Kuminga all season and play those worthless two-way players, Lamb and Jerome. What good did that do? And that's just one of many things that went horribly wrong for the Warriors this year. And we can talk about all of it, obviously. Got to give some love first to eBay Motors, a fantastic sponsor. And let me get the graphic up for them. And I will address the chat a little bit later in the show. But eBay Motors, first of all, awesome sponsor because they're reliable. They offer a guarantee. They offer low prices. And for a championship team like the Warriors, they're still technically the defending world champions until there's a new champion. They're still the champs. It's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part fits or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers. Kylan Mills will be back. I didn't realize it was her birthday just the other day. So we'll wish her a happy birthday when she comes back on Monday. She will join me. And again, it's all about the offseason. I'm a little excited, in all honesty, because pretty much from the moment last offseason started until now, there's a lot of stuff going on with this organization that has stunk to high heaven. Sometimes change is good. And it's certainly needed when things aren't going right. They're not going right with the Golden State Warriors. I want to finish up what went wrong for the Warriors tonight. First things first, early in the game, in the first quarter, the Lakers came out strong. Draymond Green alluded to it. He said they're going to come out like dogs, and they're going to give it their all, and they certainly did. And what the Warriors do to adjust to that? Nothing. The only thing that was working for him, the shot was not falling right from the beginning. Okay, the shooting struggles were real from the outset of the game. So meanwhile, the Lakers, all they were doing was just feeding it inside. LeBron was attacking the paint. They were feeding it to Anthony Davis. It's not like the Lakers were playing phenomenal basketball. They were doing what they do best, which is attack the paint, use size to their advantage. And instead of making an adjustment to that, Steve Kerr went smaller. You had Jonathan Kuminga rotting on the bench all series. You had JaMychal Green, who when he played, actually played solid. Wasn't like, he's not an all-star, but he's a 6'9" body who can make a difference. He did make a difference in one of the games. You had Moses Moody, who barely saw any time until the fourth quarter. I think he played 3 minutes total. No, Steve Kerr, watching LeBron and watching Anthony Davis punish the Warriors inside, decided, I'm going to bring in Dante DiVincenzo and Jordan Poole. Two players who are 6'4", whose shots were wildly inconsistent this entire series. DiVincenzo at least had a good game tonight, but that was not the answer. And then the other criminal thing Kerr did early in this game was take Gary Payton II out because he picked up a second foul. So what? This is game 6. You're in a must-win situation. You don't take players out because they have 2 fouls when they're the only thing going for you. Gary Payton II was taken out of the game. I'm trying to find the exact moment where he got pulled. It was at the 7-minute, 39-second mark. The Warriors were losing 18-7 at that point. And Steve Kerr decides, even though the biggest problem the Warriors were having was struggling outside shooting and no interior defense, his solution was, I'm going to bring Jordan Poole in the game for Gary Payton II, who is one of the only players scoring, one of the only players finishing. He was playing like the little big man he was. And that decision early in the game was symbolic of just the incompetency from Kerr all season long. It's like the moment he lost Mike Brown, and Mike Brown was replaced with Kenny Atkinson, who I want that dude gone. Okay. First, anyone who defends Kenny Atkinson, you have no idea what you're talking about because he doesn't do interviews. All right. And most basketball teams protect assistants. Like, assistants aren't typically allowed to talk strategy with reporters. They're not allowed to talk schematics. And so when you have like assistants like Jama Malalela, for example, he was doing segments sometimes on 95.7 The Game, the flagship station of the Golden State Warriors. You're not hearing questions that are very specific pertaining to strategy, pertaining to play calls. They have to be general questions. That's part of the rule. But while Jama Malalela does interviews, Kenny Atkinson doesn't. The dude is a mystery. And when you look at his history, I mean, he had one decently okay season in Brooklyn in a conference that was just purely abysmal, where making the playoffs was not exactly something to write home about. And when I heard that quote that Steve Kerr went to him daily to learn about analytics, the NBA is not a sport to make important, crucial decisions on analytics. If you know the game, and I trust Steve Kerr knows the game, you can trust your eyes, you can trust your instincts, you can use certain analytics, but for him to be analytic heavy in his decision-making based off Kenny Atkinson, who has virtually no track record of success, who took over Mike Brown's defensive coordinator role and the number one assistant job, this is the result. Go away. If there's got to be some casualties for this rotten season. And Kenny Atkinson, if Steve Kerr comes back, has to be a casualty. Otherwise, we're going to see the exact same crap next year we saw this year. But Steve Kerr, I mean, it was criminal. What happened tonight with the rotations, with Jordan Poole getting the run that he did, was just criminal. Jordan Poole, by the way, and Jaylen Brown during the halftime show eviscerated him because at halftime, Jordan Poole had more fouls than points. And Jordan Poole still played 23 minutes in this game. Finished with 7 points, had no three-pointers. One of his field goal makes, he made 3 shots total. One of those was a +1. He got 1 free throw attempt. One of Jordan Poole's strengths, supposedly, is drawing fouls. Because you attack, you drive, you make baskets. 1 free throw attempt in 23 minutes. He had 10 field goal attempts. He committed 4 personal fouls all in the first half. And Steve Kerr, instead of, playing the right people, played the people that he felt loyal to, the people that he felt he owed the minutes to. And so that was a costly mistake. That was just a brutal mistake. Moses Moody played 3 first half minutes. He was one of the only players on this team doing anything productive, making a serious impact out there. Guy's got a 7'1" wingspan. He's a two-way player. and Moses Moody played 3 first half minutes. And again, if you want to sit here and defend Kerr, defend him. It's your prerogative. It's your right. But if you're defending him largely because of a track record that includes 9 rings. Well, those 9 rings came thanks to Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson and Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich and Stephen Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson. All right. He wasn't out there winning those championships. I know he made a big bucket and won in a closeout game. I'm not trying to hate on Kerr, but you can't defend him this year. This was bad. This was very bad. The NBA is a results-driven league. It's a results-driven institution. And the results this year for a team that was in position to repeat as a world champion, in position to win their 5th title in 9 years, Bob Myers constructed a roster that Kerr approved. All right. Kerr was involved in James Wiseman being drafted. And Steve Kerr just does, oh, shucks, I messed up. Oh, well. No, there's got to be consequences for your actions. There's got to be accountability. This season was a mess. And Gary Payton II, by the way, played 10 whole minutes tonight. 10. Who needs Gary Payton II, right? He's only one of the key players on this team who was making a very legitimate impact. Draymond Green, by the way, suffered a calf injury in the 4th quarter, did not come back. He only played 14 first half minutes. I did not understand that. I mean, this is a player who you win or die with him. I mean, you don't get any championships without him. And Steve Kerr wasn't happy with him. I don't know what happened there in the first half. He played 14 minutes, 14. And so even if he had played all 24 minutes in the second half, he would have played with a total of 38 minutes. I mean, I don't understand what the strategy was there. I really do not understand that at all. But that was just one of the many horrible mistakes Kerr made tonight. I want to see if there's any sound that has come down yet, because I am very curious about the reaction from the Golden State Warriors. The only thing... There are 2 quotes so far from Kerr. One is, and again, as soon as I have sound, I'll play it. Steve Kerr was quoted as saying, "Ultimately, I think this team maxed out. This is not a championship team. If we were, we'd be moving on." It's quite a different message from what Kerr's been saying all season long. And if you're not a championship team, why didn't you make adjustments at the trade deadline? Why didn't you play Kuminga? And then Steve Kerr also said, quote, "Draymond, Klay, Steph, our core guys, they have plenty left to offer." Right, unquote. Is Steve Kerr delusional? Yeah, Steph does. Did he not read the stat line tonight or watch the game pertaining to Klay Thompson? If Draymond is still that guy, why did you only play him 14 minutes in the first half? Why was he not in the game for a lot of pivotal second quarter minutes? I don't get that. I don't get that. Sometimes you need fresh blood. Sometimes change is needed. Another quote from Steve Kerr. Quote, "Hopefully, Bob Myers is back. He has to figure that out," Warriors head coach Steve Kerr said. Yeah, I really hope Bob Myers is back. Much more so than Steve. If Bob Myers leaves, then I think the Warriors are in serious trouble, because he's the brains of this operation, not Steve Kerr. And again, the moment some sound actually comes in, I'll play that. Let me see what's going on in the chat here. Roddy Sage writes, "Trade Poole, have Klay come off the bench, trade for Porzingis." That's interesting you bring that up, because my buddy Connor Turno, he's the only he's proposed the only trade that I feel is somewhat realistic so far pertaining to Jordan Poole. And yes, Jordan Poole has to go. Trade him, trade that ridiculous contract. That is not paying off. He's got to go. I don't even care whether or not Draymond's back. Poole's got to go. Okay. Like, he doesn't know how to play defense. He is all about hero ball. He does not have the patience to effectively be an offensive player. So I agree. And the only trade I've seen so far that makes sense from a realistic perspective, a pragmatic perspective, is Jordan Poole for Kristaps Porzingis, because Porzingis will solve a lot of the size issues. Porzingis is a two-way player. He can shoot the three. He's on an expiring deal. So if the trade does not work out, you can say goodbye to him after the season. But I think most importantly, and this is very important to note for Jordan Poole, the Wizards are one of the only teams that I think will take him, right? So if the Wizards are afraid of losing Kristaps Porzingis for nothing, since he's on an expiring deal, and they're one of the only teams who will take a player like Jordan Poole, that's why that trade sounds interesting to me. If you if I'm gonna I will read any trade proposals that you present, by the way. Yeah, Trey Underwood, by the way, writes, "You're delusional if you think Denver is going to lose to the Lakers." Yeah, Denver is going to win the title. They look like a championship team, right? I wholeheartedly agree with you. Tom Daschle writes, "Jordan Poole is our future." What do you base that on? If that's the future, you're going to be at best a 7-8 seed for the rest of your next 10 years. Yeah, he's not the future. He is not the future. He doesn't know how to play defense, and he's clearly very immature. I know he's young, but you got to cut that loose. You got to move on. Curtis, thank you, man. I really appreciate you. Thank you for the kind words there. What else is going on in the chat? John Mernon. Now, I love the idea of Karl Anthony Towns coming to the Warriors, especially since I believe Nasser is going to be a free agent. And they have a lot of bigs there. I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to move. What's the Frenchman's name? I always like brain farted his name. But so yeah, I do. If the Warriors can get Karl Anthony Towns, I would love it. Sign me up. And yes, Jay Capinia, Nasser is a free agent. You're right. Myers and well, he got anyway. Thank you, Gobert. Thank you, Rudy Gobert. Thank you very much for. Yeah, look, we're gonna have a lot of fun shows this offseason. That is the bright side to this outcome. Is there's gonna be some change, and it's change that's necessary, and it's change that could be exciting. And one of the huge reasons why I don't want to lose Bob Myers is because if you look at Bob Myers' track record, it is overwhelmingly successful. Whether you're talking about free agents, draft picks, especially considering his draft picks are all like late 20s. And I really do believe, I've been saying it all year, I really do believe if Kuminga and Moody were a part of this rotation this year, they could have been helping out right now. They could have been a part of this team, giving you size and athleticism to contest this big Lakers team. Instead of rolling with Jordan Poole, instead of rolling with, and look, Dante DiVincenzo's been great this year, but at 6'4", he's not winning battles against this team, against the Vanderbilts, the Rory Hachimuras, the LeBron Jameses, the Anthony Davises. He's not winning those battles. You can't win with 6'4". You can't. Tom DeShiel, are you talking about me? I'm so glad the season is over, so I won't have to listen to your nonsense anymore. Name one thing that I've spewed that's nonsense if you're talking to me. Name one. Name one thing I've said that's wrong. Moron. I don't know what this means, Jesse. Lakers have a chase? Don't be a sour loser? I don't know what that means. I really don't. At least, be grammatically correct so I can understand what you're bitching about. Matthew Mohm writes, find a way to get Jaylen Brown. I mean, that's an interesting situation just because there is a lot of speculation. It's been there for a while that Jaylen Brown is not particularly happy with his situation with the Celtics and that he wants to move on. And he's about to earn a massively huge contract. I know Colin Cowherd threw out that trade proposal the other day. I would say yes to that in a second. The trade proposal, I believe, was Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins for Jaylen Brown and Malcolm Brogdon. Sign me up for that trade. The problem is the Celtics are not going to do that. Now, there's a shred of possibility if they sense Jaylen Brown is going to bail after next year. They might lose a little leverage at that point and say yes for desperation reasons, but you also have to consider there's going to be a lot of other teams out there that also want Jaylen Brown, and you're competing against them. If Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins gets you Jaylen Brown and Malcolm Brogdon, another great player, yeah, sign me up. Of course. I just don't know if that's realistic. Mark Medina writes, trade Klay and Poole. You're not going to see a Klay trade. There's got to be some loyalty here. There's got to be some appreciation for what he did contribute, but his role has to change. He's no longer one of your main guys. Jacob Pena writes, how about Bridges, referring to Mikal Bridges? Yeah, we'll talk about that. I haven't done my research yet on that. Let me read you real quick what the Golden State Warriors roster is here. John Holmes real quick writes, Kerr tried to play small ball, didn't need Wiseman or Kuminga. His idea got crushed. Yeah. And I don't know why it didn't seem obvious to him that was never going to work. For some reason, the obvious just goes over Kerr's head. I don't understand it. Chance White writes that trading Wiggs would be a quote unquote Richard move after he gave us that deal in his contract. Yeah, but ultimately this is still a business. You can't just keep him just because it wouldn't be the nice thing to do. Magnus Carlson writes, this is a great question. Is the championship window closed? Not if the front office is aggressive, not if you at least make some changes at the coaching level, whether it's, letting Kerr go or replacing Kenny Atkinson, who's a disaster. Then yeah, because you still have Steph and Curry. You still have a lot of good pieces on this team. But if they're just going to run it back with the same thing next year, hell no. You're just going to see decline. This is going to turn into the Lakers with Kobe Bryant. BG Brody's absolutely right. Bob Myers wanted Kerr to play the young guys more. Kerr refused. And it also diminished the value of Kuminga and Moody. You're absolutely right. I like those kids, though. If you play them, you will get rewarded as an organization. They are good players. These are 2 lottery picks of one of the deepest drafts in NBA history. And at any time those 2 players get an extended run, meaning like 20, 25 minutes plus, they deliver every time. Every time. I mean, if you go look at their game logs. Look at Moses Moody's game log. It's not that difficult. Go to ESPN.com. They will give you a list of every game they played at, just right in front of you as a visual. Look at every game Moody and every game Kuminga played where they played over 25 minutes. Then look at the results. Wildly successful. I've said this stat a million times. Kuminga, when he plays 25 plus minutes a game, the Warriors have won over 70% of the time. Yet Kerr decided we don't need him in this Lakers series because of quote unquote matchups. That's the excuse that Kerr kept using. Matchups. He's a media savant. He uses that word matchups to not answer honestly and genuinely. And the honest answer from him will be, I just don't feel it. I guarantee that's what it is. Or his ego can't take the fact that Kuminga actually feels he deserves to play. Because Steve Kerr can be egomaniacal. And the evidence of that is in having a former media player member fired because they criticized Kerr one time. And Quindary Weatherspoon last year saying he deserved to have a guaranteed deal, gone. That's why he got let go. He didn't get let go because he wasn't a good fit on this team. He got let go because he actually had the audacity to express self-confidence. And I don't appreciate that Kerr acts like an emperor who should not ever be criticized. That's asinine, man. That is not good leadership. I'm sorry. Yes, Joe, you're absolutely right. I loathe ego, and ego kills, and I'm sensing too much of that from the top in the coaching staff this year. Jesse writes the Warriors will sign Brooke Lopez. Yeah, maybe. I mean, he turns 36 next year. Well, the show is going so long, and this is such a monumental night for the Golden State Warriors. I mean, the organization and obviously all of us who care, we're about to enter the most important offseason in Warriors history. That's not hyperbolic. That's truth. The Warriors dynasty is potentially over, certainly at a crossroads. There's going to be a lot of massively huge decisions to make in the offseason. So this show tonight went long. And I'm splitting it up into 2 parts. So stay tuned for part 2 of the Warriors losing to the Lakers, losing the series 4-2, and now having a lot of questions to answer. Stay tuned for part 2. Thanks.